In today's video, I'm going to show you how to cure and maintain your smoker. So the first things you do when you get your smoker are very important to how the rest of your barbecue will turn out. So stick around and I'll show you how to do it. One of the main questions we get asked is, well, how do I cure my smoker when I first receive it? So the smoker's never been lit, it's never been cooked on, it's just come out of a production scenario going from raw steel to what you see now. And the first thing you're going to want to do is cure your pit or season it. The way to do that is to oil the inside and light a very small fire, and I'm going to show you how that's done. The first thing you want to notice is your ambient temperature. Today our temperatures are probably going to be 90 degrees. Our current ambient temperature on the pit is almost at 100 because it's sitting out here in the sun. Your first 2 to 3 hours on the smoker, you're going to run at about 150, which means I only need to build a fire large enough to increase the heat by 50 degrees. When we increase the heat, your metal's going to expand and any dust from the production is going to drop out. You want to think of this as like a cast iron skillet. So you always season cast iron. And that's why heavier steel cooks better than rolled steel or lighter weight steel. All of our pits are made with a minimum of a 1/4 inch main chambers. Depending on the size of the pipe, they can go up 3/8 or larger. The first thing you need to do is oil the pit. Now you can use any kind of oil, Crisco oil, peanut oil. I wouldn't recommend olive oil. You could use Pam spray. Personally, I don't think that's heavy enough of an oil. We are going to oil the racks as well. I don't worry about oiling the bottom of it because as you oil the top, everything's going to drain down into the bottom of the pit. You could use bacon grease. I'm going to be using Crisco oil today. This is actually a pit that belongs to a client. He hasn't picked it up yet, and I got his permission to go ahead and season it. Seasoning takes about a minimum of 4 to 6 hours, and longer is always better. I'm going to start with Crisco oil, well, Crisco lard shortening. And simply rub it down on the inside. And you can see the steel is already hot, so it's just going to melt away. And this can be a messy process. I prefer this to a liquid simply because I can get it to adhere to the top. When you're using a liquid oil and you try to spray it, it drips a lot faster. So I will come back in here with some Pam spray just to get in all the really small spaces. Gonna do the ends. Now you can see, if I get in here, you can see that I have greased the entire back of the smoker. I've done the end caps as well. I have done the baffle. It's kind of hard to see. Done the baffle and the ends. We also did inside of the lid. I did not put any kind of oil inside the firebox or on that meat rack. Now I will be oiling that meat rack separately. The next step is to spray the meat racks themselves and get that going. So what I'm using is Pam spray. Comes in all different flavors. This is just the saute grill spray. And our next step will be to light fire. So since the temperatures are already high, all we need is a little bit of charcoal. And you can either use a charcoal chimney, a standard charcoal chimney, just about a half full. That's all the fire you're going to need. Or just a couple handfuls of charcoal. You can use any kind of charcoal you want. Just never use lighter fluid. Lighter fluid will actually cause a temperature to jump higher, which can cause blistering on your paint. Not to mention it puts a nasty taste in your smoker that you will never get rid of. So avoid lighter fluid. Right, so simply putting a small handful of charcoals. I'm just going to hit it with the torch just long enough to get the charcoal started. It only takes a minute or two, and this way I know that I'm not putting any contaminants in here. Again, I only used just a couple handfuls of charcoal. Again, we're at already, the pit's at 100 degrees just from sitting out in the sun. I'm going to bring it up to about 150, and I'm going to keep it there for about probably 2 to 3 hours. Always leave the top lid of the smoker open, simply because you want to let the additional heat out, and you don't want to, you're letting negative heat out, and you don't want to blister the top of the firebox. Again, this is a brand new pit. It's probably, the paint's been curing for about 5 days. All right, now my coals are turning white around the edges. I'm going to turn off the propane, and we're going to go from there. The next thing we're going to do is I'm going to open the stack. I'm going to start by opening the stack all of the way. And once I add wood, I will shut the stack down to about half and allow that heavy smoke to sit inside the chamber. Once your coals are going, you can close the lid. And the next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to take the Pam spray, the same stuff I used on the racks, And since I'm just starting and it is hot out here, I'm going to lightly spray just the top of the box. Now you don't want to do this on your pit when your pit is cold, simply because you'll turn into a sticky mess and you'll have bugs and everything else that blows by will stick to your pit. But by doing it at the beginning of a cook or when you first start lighting your pit, you keep the paint pliable. And if it's on an older pit and you happen to have a small crack, it keeps moisture away from the cracked paint, because that's where rust is going to develop. All right, I'm going to let it sit here until it reaches 150 degrees, and at that point I'm going to add wood. Again, I am going to make sure that all of my vents are open. One thing to keep in mind when you have your smoker, maintenance-wise, never use anything on your smoker that is not a food grade product. If you're oiling your hinges, you want to use PAM spray. You want to use a food grade. If for some reason you need to pressure wash the inside of your pit, use Simple Green. If you're going to need to clean it with any kind of cleanser, make sure it is food grade. I always recommend Simple Green. And when it comes to the wheels, the part that actually touches the ground, on that you can use WD-40 or any kind of lubricant for mechanical. But again, nothing above the wheels should ever be used with anything that isn't food grade. As far as covering your pits, we don't necessarily recommend. These pits are made to be outside. When you add a cover, you capture moisture. Moisture builds up underneath that. So in weather where it's hot, it's going to sweat. In weather, the humidity, anything, it's going to hold moisture, and that's going to cause rust, and that's what you're trying to avoid. So having it out in the open, just the short periods of rain that it's exposed to, will do less damage than keeping it covered. We'll come back in a few minutes. This will only take about 15-20 minutes to get up to 150, and then we'll add some wood and let it sit there all day. Stick around. Okay, so our temperature has now reached 150 degrees, and at this point I'm going to close down my stack to about half, because I want to maintain the smoke, and I'm going to be adding wood. Now, again, nothing massive, because I do not want to increase the heat of this pit above 200, 220. We're going long term, will be between 220 to 250 for about 6 hours. So there you go. Stick a hickory, close the pit, let it sit. This is do its thing. Okay, well that's it. We've added the wood. We're going to let it sit here for 4 to 6 hours, actually till the end of the day. So we probably got a good 6 hours left. And I will just maintain the temperature below 250 for the next 6 hours. The only other thing that I can think of that's important is that when you're done smoking, when you're done cooking, within a day or two, you want to make sure that you empty the ash out of the ash pan, because ash is corrosive. So you want to make sure that you're removing the ash. You don't want to create rust inside your firebox. As long as you keep it clean, keep it oiled, this one, close smoker ought to last you 30, 40 years, if not your lifetime. If I've answered all your questions, give me a thumbs up. Otherwise, leave a message down below. I'll be happy to answer any questions you might have.